Today, on my birthday, I have offered up some words in celebration of life, but far too often, this is personalized to one's own identity and achievements. While this is commendable and held in esteem in its own right, I would like to direct towards an alternative as Harold Bloom discusses on literary geniuses. The birthday, historically in its origins, was for the Roman a celebration of the human spirit itself. The kinship of baked treats with the flame of a candle comes from the participation of the experience to be in its capacity for reason. Through the tribulation and errors of that spirit, I still observe the gracefulness of the sun brightly burning on this summer's evening. It should not be forgotten that it is our ability to create through the conditions of human intellect as observed in our tradition or presuppositions. While a birthday may be singularly observed, it is the culmination of a people's spirit that flows through you. This cannot be quantified simply by an evaluation of aesthetic appreciation, but to be granted rightness in its experience at all. Today, in gratitude, it may not be all for all cases, but I am only in here in the now, with my fellow people proud to take part in the same spirit. Not for the days of yesteryear, although we cherish and try to imitate their wisdom, but only for now as they too respectfully transcended themselves, in order to bring now. Is not the greatest observance of such respect in its protection of that authenticity? As for the future, it too requires its assurance that its due process is given just as done for me, as I wish. One could wonder if that spirit was given its observance and story told how it would shape the future in its directions of the past knowledge put forth by the creative imaginations of our predecessors. Today I choose to observe that spirit that gives life to all of us. The act of novelty or the unknown meant with the intellectual capacity gives us an inkling into who we are and how we quite relate to the world, whether in its material practical consumption or in the realm of ideas. The uncharted or the gamut of possibility cannot be comprehended unless given chance. What holds that, our spirit in the present, truly be observed in its capacity in all of its gloriousness. As Aristotle and the Greeks, who were the masters of the condition, tells us that humans are creatures of imitation, thus making education of the impressionable and tethered pureness of youth. Perhaps the greatest of our past, a genius like Shakespeare, or the sharp brilliance of Goethe's discoveries across the disciplines, is enough to bring vitality to the future of an erroneous, stagnant people. We no longer know history or its sacrifices, but will soon learn it again. Is this drive forward that defines how the presence of our wishes could aspire to be in the shadow of the bright candles of the room? The spirit of reason, the fire that Neanderthals harnessed to consume meat that shaped our brain's capacity, the talents and errors of such before must first be recognized in the unattainable casting into the novel unknown. As Heidegger talks of the clearing and the metaphor of the rich, dense Germanic forest, a people becoming aware of the creativeness out of a novel circumstance. The clearing is the culmination of such spirit in a people. Such excellence of spirit cannot come about from something formulaic, although it may be cultivated and discovered. But far too often it is in reprisal or the antithesis. The reformation of what the rules should be comes from the genius stricken enough to challenge the greats before him. What would come of a world that celebrated our Goethe instead of burying them under the weight of our decline of historicism out of a sheer decadence of what our subject actually was opposed to its mechanisms? The spirit and genius exemplifies a people but cannot save them alone, nor can a decadent civilization simply draw up the genius. A people who are told they can think but not have the vitality to actually do so, as Spengler would put. The village may not actually raise the genius insofar that the genius transcendence of time and its collaboration towards each other. The masses or prior institutions largely in folly, for the genius defines what the village actually entails. We must ask in today's world, are we receptive to such novel thinking? Can a populace in such regard of hostilities create new villages or break the necessary rules given in the fourth of the soothing of what I consider Faustian progress? The passing down, the master to the apprentice, has its own tradition of dialectical forms within our civilization. The thesis of the master becoming aware of his own value in its passing down beyond himself in the spirit of the antithesis of the student. The subtle agreement upon modern culture, certainly in culture tropes of the student succeeding and innovating over the master. only to then synthesize again in its own maturation. This, of course, influenced through Hegelian dialectics in its process of our human spirit and its endurance. Such a process is now shunned by people who do not appreciate our forebears. Such a recognition of this fatalist quest requires an appreciation of such spirit set forth. Recognizing talent requires the humility of difference in the schema that not all can be explained for why such greatness occurs, but choosing to observe its greatness and do in reverence of our spirit, this requires an establishment of the order or chain of what is sublime and what is not. It is why the birthday candle shines bright. We should give credence to those who may possess gifts that cannot be ascertained to this could lead to resentment. For spirit, as Schopenhauer put forth in his representation of will, is all there really is guaranteed for mankind. His wishes from the burning embers of the candlestick to hope is to be for the last man who deduced he did not choose the summit of the west to his back, but must understand that his component in the orderness of a people's direction. What will we turn to after the candles blow out? Is this truly the only guaranteed access to this spirit? What shall my people put forth to facilitate the conditional acceptance of eccentric spirits meant to chase fire? To bring the conditional to light for what the rules shall be until the next summation of the fruit of our spirit. This is what is worth celebrating. This is what it means to accept the gifts of creative ingenuity in its highest form. A celebration of the reciprocation between the fire of our willed intellect and the sublimation of the limitations of the people who follow. Just as God's incarnation of his own individual in the proclamation of I am, and how he is revealed to us, teaches us in our Christian lineage that the individual wisdom and cultivation of one's own spirit or intellect is embedded within us. The reciprocation of spirited individual attainment to assert away from the fruits of the masses and cultivate novelty to bring back to the herd. When we examine, just as here with Christianity, we see the abstraction of our cultural and metaphysical contributions as the genius who leaves the safety of his own rules and prudentials prior and deterritorialize as passed down through the creation of technology in the 12th and 13th century by Gothic monks across the poorest mountains of Europe, establishing techniques and logical systemization that would pave forth to one day become of modern science. The ingenuity in what is described as courage in the Greeks can and still hold a lineage that cannot be broken by the establishment of embezzled excess in the concrete rat race of the herd gathering against the telos of nature's law. This too should note to the strain of such spirits among the relations across the transcendence of centuries will exacerbate and need an even more and more infinitesimal will that appears not in us for now. Surely such a summit for a civilization in its fate requires the sharp force lessons of gravity and its principles that stratified us in its crude polarity. Only God in the act of its creative immenseness for said spirited individuals can redeem our herd. The awareness of excellence not only burns bright within, but is ready to exude itself from those with authority that escapes. Modernity for its corruption, and authority in its essence is meant to instruct creatively how being is meant to be, and for that we celebrate only those with competence. Now blow out the candles and remember what to wish as the air of history leaves you.